Thank you very much. Kia ora everyone, welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting for the 5th of October 2020. Welcome to councillors, staff and members of the public, those that are presenting tonight and those that are watching via YouTube. Declare the meeting open and call for any apologies. We have some tabled this evening from His Worship the Mayor, Deputy Mayor Carruthers and Paul Matchwork. Any other apologies for the meeting? Being no further apologies, is someone happy to move that those apologies be received and accepted? Councillor Cogan. And second, Councillor Neal. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? The resolution's carried. Thank you. The interest register is here for members of the committee to make any additions or subtractions. I'll just circulate that. It's also circulated electronically by Microsoft Teams, so you're able to update on that as well. Just please make myself and Megan aware of any additions. Members of the committee, are there any urgent items that are not on the agenda that should be on the agenda for this meeting? Staff? Nothing from the staff? Thank you. We'll carry on moving to the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held the 3rd of August 2020. They have been circulated separately via Microsoft Teams. There were no updates or corrections of error or fact received, so the minutes that are circulated we take as a true and accurate record of the meeting, true and correct record of the meeting if someone's prepared to move that they were such. Councillor Neal, thank you very much, and Councillor Davidson. Move that the minutes of the Community Development Committee meeting held the 3rd of August 2020 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. And those against? The resolution is carried, and I, the Chair, approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed Community Development Committee meeting minutes of the 3rd of August 2020. Right, the action list, pages 4 through 5 of your agenda, and I welcome the Chief Executive, Simon Bastian, to speak to the action list.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors and guests. I'll take go through point by point. The terms of reference for the part are reserved as Parks and Environment Subcommittee. The action was to provide the policy for the memorials and artwork in public places. That has been completed and it's been loaded onto Microsoft Teams. We're strict to invite the future committee, to a future committee meeting, so that's happening this evening. Will be presented to tonight. Hope particular governance group schedule a workshop to address the issues around groups involved and who or would like to be involved. So this is on hold until the outcomes of several of the decisions recently. So we'll be looking to hold a workshop. This also relates to this next point as well, in terms of a workshop in terms of what the subcommittee is actually trying to achieve and define the parameters of that role, of that group. Remy Woodstock Lookout, so council has taken ownership of that, and it has done for a while, but it was never formally taken over. So we have completed the works on the walkway and also replaced the interpretation panels. There's one piece of work that's still being processed, but I request that I take that one off the action list. Hokitika Cemetery and signage. This signage refers to NZTA signage in and out of town. Lack of maintenance was noted in these areas. Alluded to previously, we have done a full audit of cemeteries. There were some shortcomings with regards to the contractor. They were taken up with the relevant contractor to resolve. So that'll be an ongoing process in terms of audit. We have had a meeting with NZTA also regarding signage and highlighting the shortcomings of that. And it sits with them to address it. It's fair to say it was a hard road to sell, but it's with them now to identify it. So I'll leave it there. Hokitika Central Business Group Revitalisation Working Group. So we've had a couple of workshops with council on this now in terms of town centre planning. This sits with Planning and Regulatory Committee going forward, and we'll be working through that with that committee. And signage, plan and budget. So we have met with Destination Hokitika's staff, Samuel Blight being their contact person, and Fiona's been working with them on a future works for that. There is a discussion we'd like to have with Doc later this week in terms of Hokitika Gorge, and some of this will lead into the LTP process. Any questions?
Thank you, Simon. I'll open it up for questions from the committee. Councillor Cogan.
Just a question around NZTA.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the signage still looks terrible in a lot of areas, so are they going to do something about it, or is this something that they want to put on their long-term plan?
It comes down to their maintenance program. It's fair to say that they believe, well, their maintenance program has been trimmed nationally, but probably more so on the West Coast. We have highlighted it several times now, and it's something we raise every time we have a meeting with them. But we can't force them to do the work.
Yeah, so, but the only problem with that is, I think, you know, like that is a reflection on our area and,
Understand that.
yeah, so, you know, I mean, is this something that in the short term we just need to address ourselves?
It's not our asset, we can't actually touch their assets.
But then if we leave it, then it's just, I mean, it does. It
Yeah,
looks,
there's a criteria they evaluate their signage with, and as long as it's readable from a certain distance, they believe it still meets criteria. So I can't change their criteria. It's something we'll keep raising with them as an urgent item.
do we have it in writing to them so we can?
We've got an action list that runs with them.
Right.
There's a number of things obviously we raised in terms of formal discussions. And I think we'd meet with them bi-monthly. I'll follow up with you where the team's at, if there's any room for movement.
Yeah, I think we need to, because I mean, if this is going to be ongoing for another 12 months or so, you know, I just, yeah, it looks terrible.
So what do we need to update in the action list in that space?
Once again, well, the only thing I can keep doing is making sure it sits on their priority list from council.
Who do you deal with at NZTA?
So we deal with the operations manager, and it gets escalated to Colin Hay.
Okay.
Can you mention that, you know, our committee has once again raised it as a real concern, and yeah, we'd like to be given a time frame of how long they anticipate it will be.
What I suggest that I formally write to the South Island manager about it as an action.
Yes, that would be. Are people comfortable with that as a way forward in regards to signage across the district, state highways primarily that are controlled by
We've got a number of
NZTA?
Yeah, a number of examples that we've taken photos of and shared with NZTA.
I would imagine lots of councils are saying the same things, and it'll come down to budget, won't it? And do we want the potholes fixed or the signage cleaned? So they'll be juggling their budgets in the same way, don't they? It's possibly worse over here because of the wetness and the mould. But
We could create some jobs out of this.
Yeah.
Maybe jobs for nature. Where's Doc?
Councillor Cogan, do you have any further questions?
No, that was all.
Councillor Neil?
Just lost my agenda there. No further questions, thank you.
Councillor Davidson?
Yeah, just on the Hakatiko Cemetery there, was there talk about vandalism at the last meeting up there, and perhaps sort of closing it off at night time, locking the gates there?
It was raised.
Yes.
It hasn't been actioned as a way forward. There, ideally, we have a designated car park where people don't drive on the site and have a walk through. There's no designated car park at the cemetery entrance.
Okay.
Seaview there. That's not our property, so we can't confirm that. But that's something that I was keen to work with the owner up there.
Okay then.
It is a solution, and I have been in contact with them.
Okay.
So that's the long-term solution.
Okay, thank you.
And then you're right, it could be a walk-only process.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Davidson?
No, fine, thanks.
It's just up to me now. Okay, I'm just going through terms of reference. I think now that the decision has been made in relation to the transfer of the museum function back in-house, it would be great to set and call for expressions of interest for that subcommittee to get going, particularly in the museum space, but also the culture and heritage space. I'm wondering whether there's actually some synergies there if we need to look at the, from a district-wide perspective, the relationship between the museum and other things, rather than in isolation. So can we please, because we do have the power to actually establish subcommittees, but I don't think we want to do that tonight. But I would like us to go through, or I would suggest to the committee now, based off that action list, that we're now ready to call for expressions of interest with parties that have been named in the action list and start the process, set a date for a workshop initially to get things moving in the heritage and culture space, particularly the museum, the library, and the heritage and cultural planning work that's been done. The Jackie Gurdon report.
Jesse, do you want to make any comments on that?
Good evening to you.
Yeah, so in terms of that, yes, there's the intent to run a workshop first, and that's about identifying stakeholders, interested parties, and bringing the right groups to the fore. And then, particularly from the museum perspective, is to determine what model is the best model for governance of the museum content. And then it's looking at the other in terms of the cultural and heritage, and it's also trying to determine as a result of that workshop, is it two separate arms that need to be set up and established, or is it one that can actually meet the requirements of both? Because it's the other thing which I'm sure council agree with. We don't want committees or subcommittees for the sake of committees. We want the right groups of people who aren't being pulled on for different committees all the time, and then we're not getting value out of either. So that is the intent of the first workshop, to actually determine what is the best model going forward. It may be that there are two separate streams, or you can get the right people so that you can actually cluster them to deal with better effect.
Right.
So we'll set a workshop date for that as an action.
So will that be publicly notified, that workshop?
Potentially, it's just one of those going through in terms of what councillors are comfortable with in terms of we've got the right representation, or whether we go wider, because it is a workshop and want to make sure we're capturing the right element, because it's not necessarily just about, what we don't want it to be reflective is that it's just about the Hukatipu Museum. It's not, it's about culture and heritage and the history of the Western District. So while there might be a key focal point in terms of museum, as a phrase before with council and other formats, it's what can the rest of the district look like, so we don't just become centrally focused all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the potential that will go wider in terms of seeking general interest, but we also need to control it in terms of it being attendees for the purpose of the workshop, not the wish lists and everything else that can come out as well, so that it's a focused and driven workshop.
Council loves to control things. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
So based on those comments, I think it would be great if we could see within the next, we've kind of got a month, 6 weeks in terms of work plan ahead of us. It would be great to set a workshop date. I guess with this committee, plus those stakeholders listed in the action list as maybe a starting point, inviting representatives from and people that have have been involved previously with the likes of these organisations that hold the knowledge. So can we please add that as an action with the committee's agreements?
Yep.
That workshop and that work program commences with some relative urgency. That ticks off I think the Hokitika Museum and the Cultural Heritage work, that's the Swordfield Cemetery. They signage plan and budget for signage, sorry to hark back to that, but where does that sit? Does that sit with this committee or did that end up sitting with planning and regulatory?
It sits on a little bit of both. Fiona, do you want to cover this one off?
Good evening, Fiona.
Good evening. Sorry, which part of the signage are we referring to?
Sorry, I'm looking on page 5 of our agenda, the last action point. It's in relation to Destination Hokitika's proposal around the signs into the town, signs within the town, and the gorge signage as well. I'm just wondering, where have we got that sitting? It straddles a number of committees, but does it sit with this committee to discuss, or is it planning and regulatory?
It got discussed last time at Planning and Regulatory. It was originally raised in this committee, but I guess on the wayside of having conversations just at a staff level, those pre-application kind of discussions with Destination Hokitika. So I'm happy to update both if that's easier for you.
I'd love an update. Thank you.
Okay, so with regard to where we're at the moment, as Simon alluded to before, one of the concepts for Destination Hokitika is around putting an information kiosk out at Hokitika Gorge. The gorge is where we have a memorandum of understanding with Department of Conservation around the work that happens out there. Obviously, we both have land out there, and whatever happens on one property affects the other. So I'll be having discussions with DOC in the very near future around how they feel about having an advertising kiosk out there. Destination Hokitika alluded to, I guess, putting the billboard idea, so the rural signage, at a level of hold at the moment, but their most pressing issue that they wanted to follow up on was the signage within the township itself. To be looking at directional signage for businesses. So we're working through, they were going to go back and revisit their concept, and we're going to have another discussion with the transportation manager when he's back on board. We'll go and have a look at the sites. So there was an indication from some work that Jackie Gurdon did previously around where they wanted the signage to go, but we're at the stage now of actually standing on the ground and making sure that it makes sense. So that's where we're at with that.
That's great. Do you have a timeline you're working to, Fiona? In terms of
the transportation manager is currently on leave, but when he's back, we'll set a date for that.
Great. And is the signage likely to be up before the Christmas break?
Well, that's going to be up to Destination Hokitika because it is their project. We're just helping enable them to pull it off, basically.
It'd be great to see it completed. Any other comment on that or questions to the Manager Planning and Customer Service? Thank you very much, Fiona. Thanks for the update. Are there any further questions on the action list? Is the council prepared to move that it be received and the additions added, the completed items removed? Councillor Cogan, second. Councillor Neal, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The resolution is carried. Thank you very much. We hold these meetings in the evening to allow for community participation, and we've got a number of community groups and organisations presenting to us this evening. So thank you so much to our staff and our community groups volunteers for being present this evening to be able to give us an update of the important work you do in our district. First up, we have the Hokitika Regent Theatre, and that's a first for us really in terms of our reporting relationship with the Hokitika Regent Theatre. So we welcome Bruce Watson, Debbie and Don to the, I was going to say table, but the lectern, the presenting area. And this evening, so come and join us today. This evening's about setting up our expectations in terms of reporting, in terms of what we want to see as a committee. So with that in mind, the team have come along tonight. With that, let's develop what reporting will look like going forward, rather than spending hours on templates and things ahead of this meeting. It would be great for us as a committee to give them a steer in terms of what we're expecting and how we can best work together to satisfy each other's requirements. So, good evening, Bruce.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Councillor Martin, for the invitation to come for a start and welcome tonight. We've tabled a background paper on what we've been up to since we last met with council, which was the submissions to the annual plan, and that's quite a comprehensive paper. I don't intend to go through it point by point, 100%. But what I would like to do is just speak to the main points and then end with the discussion points that we would like to discuss with the committee. And you may have some other things yourselves, so if we could quickly do that and then leave as much time for discussion as possible, it would be good. If you've got any tricky questions, you can ask Debbie or Tom. So as mentioned, we're here because of the decision that council made at annual planning time to increase our budget to $57,500 for this year, plus GST, and with further agreement that provision be made in the long-term plan for continuation of the grant at that level, plus an annual adjustment for inflation. That on our part, we needed to provide council with an annual business plan, and that we needed to meet twice yearly with this committee. So this is the first of these meetings. And in addition, we're happy to do anything else that's required. And at the moment, we send minutes of our monthly meetings to Councillor Martin and Carruthers. That's just a long-standing thing that we've done. And we also have an invitation that councillors or any staff for that matter can come to our regular meetings of the management committee. So again, just touching on what we've been up to since June, obviously the major impact of things that's been going on in the theatre is the COVID-19 situation. And when we met with council, we'd just come out of the lockdown period, and with some uncertainty as to what was going to happen. Things were just getting going again, and we got the level 2 requirement, which, while it still allowed some activities in the theatre, did still constrain us, and it led to a number of events being cancelled and postponed. The major impact, which is quite different from the impact on other businesses in town on us, is that internationally we depend mainly on films from overseas, the cinema side of our operation. And the cinema side of the operation is what subsidises the community side. And so if we miss out on the big blockbusters, as we have been doing, then it has a big impact on our annual accounts. And I did circulate included in here, just a graph which you can very clearly see what the impact has been on our, these are just attendances at paid movies and events last year and this year, and you can see the huge drop with the complete lockdown happening there, and again the level 2 things starting to drop rapidly when level 2 came on in September. So it's pretty drastic, really. And if it hadn't been for our anticipation of receiving $57,500 from council, and in particular the government's wage subsidy, we would be in obviously serious strife. Since we wrote this background paper, we've reworked the figures for our business plan. Firstly, looking at the calendar year, which is our financial year from January through to the end of December, And then we've taken another picture going from the council's financial year, which is going from the 1st of July through to the 30th of June next year. And while we're not submitting those figures tonight, because there are commercially confidential aspects and personnel confidential aspects to them, we would be happy to make them available in other ways to the council. But we can say that if it hadn't been principally for the wage subsidies, that we would be severely in deficit. But the wage subsidies and the council grant mean that we're, we've got a break-even budget or slightly better at the end of December and again at the end of June. That's with the best predictions we can make at the moment. Of course, we don't really know what's going to happen. We've got another lockdown period, or another slowdown period, another level 2 period that will severely impact on us. And just to give you one example of that, the school had to, it depends on 4 houses for something like the Lion King Junior operation to run successfully. And because level 2, we're going to have it in level 2, because level 2 meant that we could have a maximum of only 100 in the theatre, wasn't enough to make it financially viable. Almost 100 cast members for a start. So that has been delayed, and we've just now reset the dates for that. But obviously that has a big impact. Another example is Anzac Day, where we can have 500 people there. That didn't occur this year. And you may have, those of you who paid attention to these sort of things, just 2 days ago, it was announced that the James Bond film that was going to be shown in November and December, which was going to be our first really big film for the year, has been postponed until April. And this is largely dependent on what's happening in the United States, and you can see that things there aren't going to be sorted out in a hurry. I'm so thankful for the situation that we've got here, but it does have an impact on theatres. In the meantime, we've been doing what we can to run sort of film festival activity and local films. One of our top sellers has been the Waiuta film, and we're picking up people on the Denison film as well. So people are really appreciating that. But there's a lot, particularly, really make our money in school holiday times, and we're going to be facing, our budget anticipates we're going to take quite a hit in the current school holidays and main summer break school holidays. We've been doing a lot of work on the Regional Cafe while it's been vacant. As it happened, part of the maintenance work we were doing involved the front window being broken. It was a blessing in disguise, because it gave us an opportunity to deal with probably leaks and rotting problems that have been above the window since 1935. So that's all been fixed along with the window itself. So while it was a hassle at the time, we ended up in a much stronger situation, largely paid for by insurance, and with further repairs as well, at a time when the cafe wasn't occupied. And we have a very good tenant. We can't reveal who it's going to be. We're just in the final stages of contract negotiations with them at the moment, and they should be starting, we projected in our budget that they'll be starting in December. And that'll be an important addition to our budget, which is anticipated in the figures. I've already mentioned the wage subsidy. We've also been working on an on-licence for the theatre. In the past, we've issued special licences. The on-licence will mean we're still only going to operate and sell alcohol on special occasions. It won't be sold in the cafe, just special events at the theatre. That's because of the sort of social role the theatre has, and we have young people there a lot. We don't want it to be a place where you can buy alcohol every day, but there are lots of events where it's appropriate to have alcohol. And by having an on-licence, we can be a lot more responsive. If somebody comes in and says they want to run something next week, we can do it. We don't have to wait 20 working days, for a special licence. So that's in the process at the moment. We've been taking advantage of the quiet times to do major equipment upgrades using grant money from smaller grants and from the repurposed Development West Coast grant. We've made huge progress there. And every time we do one of these things, install new equipment, it does actually cost out, say, most of these things save staff time, and they also are new equipment, so they save our maintenance budget for a while as well. So some big improvements there, particularly the projection front and our business running systems. We've got a number of upgrades that are either underway at the moment, again funded out of small grants, or the Development West Coast grant, and we've provided a list of those. Most of those are already funded, although we need another couple of small grants to sort of top up some of them. But I should say, in addition to that, we've got a long-term development program still there, things that are quite costly that we haven't done and we can't really do out of small grants. For example, putting an LED lighting, performance lighting system into the theatre, getting the outside properly lit up with LED lights, and a number of other projects which have just been on the list, and will make running the theatre more efficient and enable us to handle more effectively a lot more events in due course. So we will be looking for council support, and I'll touch on that in a minute, for maintenance and long-term development help, not necessarily just financial, but morally in terms of taking cases that we're putting to funding institutions. I've already touched on the updated business plan. We've always operated a business plan, or at least since 2012. We're not far off the point at which we can give a tidied up version of the council. And as I mentioned, we've already done the budget side of that. But we're really only talking about a few weeks off until we can provide the edited version to council. But I just wanted to reassure you, we always have a business plan and the budget, and that's ongoing. And we've provided that information to council before. So just a few concluding comments. The sort of things we'd like to discuss tonight is we think it would be actually really valuable for a site visit as soon as possible by at least this committee of council and senior staff. It's amazing how much more real it comes. We know this from past experience. Just walk through the theatre. We can talk about what we've done, what we need to do, how things run, and it just means that when we're writing to you or talking like this, it's going to just make it far more meaningful. So we would like to, and perhaps that's where we should discuss the fine detail of the business plan or anything else that you would like to get involved in. But we'd just appreciate that just as soon as possible. We think it will be not just a big help to us, but to you. Again, we'd like to sort of know, we have to get in touch with staff or councillors who are the key staff and key councillors we'd like to have us to have as our first points of contact. In the past, we've tended to keep in contact with councillors Carruthers and Martin. We're happy to work with anyone. We'd like to know when we need to next meet with the Community Development Committee. We'd like some discussion about the best process for handling a business plan on a yearly basis. I mean, what the council's resolution says was an annual business plan. As I said, we sort of, at a working level, we'll keep our business plan updated, but we'd like to know from you when you would like. Obviously, we'll provide one shortly, which we'll do for the current year, but we'd like to know in future when you would like that to be supplied. And also when we're reporting to this committee, just what sort of reports you would like. And we'd also like to know what we need to do in order to make sure that the provision for this ongoing funding and the annual inflation adjustment is provided for in the review of the long-term plan. And I mentioned here as well, we really welcome as ratepayers and residents of the district to see what has happened with the money which has gone into town halls and memorials. That's just fantastic to see throughout Westland with those halls, many of which have got a lot of maintenance overdue that needs to be done. So we've got no quarrels with that at all, but we I guess we are a bit disappointed that we weren't approached to put in a bid ourselves, and because even $2,000 would be a big help to us currently, and we'd like to know whether, I guess, both from the council and it would be interesting to see from government whether there's going to be any second bite of the cherry, whether some of the unspent money which inevitably will happen with the provincial growth fund can be sort of reapportioned to, town halls like ours. And lastly, something which really came out as part of that, we've always had a sort of calculation in our business plan about what our long-term maintenance and effectively depreciation plant replacement requirements are. And we will touch on that in our business plan again, but we need to have some discussion, not necessarily here tonight, but perhaps during a visit to the theatre about how we handle that in the long term, because we have been very successful in getting both volunteer help, sponsorship help and grants for what would normally be maintenance and plant replacement that we would, budget for and build into your budgets. So we have to have money there to do it. We've been successful. We've had a successful sort of few years doing that, but we can't always anticipate that. And in any case, we should make it clear what that is. So yes, we'd like to talk about that at some point. Okay. Councillor Martin, it's just what I wanted to say by way of introduction.
Thank you for the very comprehensive introduction. No, we do really appreciate it, Bruce, and thank you for making yourselves available. I guess, first of all, are there any questions from the committee in terms of what Bruce has presented this evening before we begin to answer some of those key themes, questions to consider? Anything to clarify? Or?
No, it's as always a very comprehensive report, Bruce. Thank you. Covered everything.
Yeah, that was a very comprehensive report, Bruce, actually, and recognition as always to you guys for the tremendous amount of work you guys, do, and particularly, as you said, now with COVID. The theatre here, as I'm sure many theatres in the country and around the world are experiencing now without having those big blockbusters able to hit the screens. It must be a very testing time for everybody. The one thing that I would just want to mention is I actually would fully support too. I think the idea of actually doing a site visit is a very good idea. So very keen to do that with you guys, because often it is that visual that gets your head around a better understanding of what it is when you're reporting to us on those discussion points. And the other one was also around with grants, because I know that that's also very time consuming and very volunteer based part of what all of you guys do as well. So I would be very keen to see how moving forward, there's can be a little bit more communication, possibly from council around when there's grants that might come up that we become aware of, that we think that that's perfect, that suits, these particular groups, including yourself, just to be able to, tap into that money, everyone to be able to tap into that money. However, it's pretty amazing what you guys have managed to do and achieve as far as grants go, and have fixed in the meantime. You're very fortunate to obviously have such a proactive group on board for that. And my only suggestion when we talked around that business plan, I guess you have more of an indication than us, but I was thinking if it was twice yearly, wouldn't it be probably around April and October? Start of, end of that kind of warmer summery period and then the winter period. Quite nice to see the comparisons between those months of the year. But I'm happy for your, obviously, you know, you guys to provide feedback on that as well.
Yes, I guess, by April in most years, we know what has happened over the summer, which is our sort of busiest time. Yeah, so that's the time in which we normally make money that carries us through, you know, into the next council grant. And so that's probably that probably would be a good time for reporting, wouldn't it?
Just for so if we align it to the long-term plan or the annual plan, ideally October or early November would be perfect for us in terms of receiving that forecast budget for the following year.
Yeah.
That'll obviously highlight any shortcomings or so.
And April could work well too, because it's in the just prior to public consultation for any proposed amendments. So would that work as a date for the next?
Yes, well, it will work out, of course, for this year, because it'll be late October or November that you get the business plan. And we can then just do an update of how things have performed in April. Would that work? Simon?
Yeah. So we'll lock you in to receive that business plan and then in the coming weeks, but going forward to present in April and October each year. So the next community parliament meeting falls around April.
Yeah. And we can present it in a form that sort of doesn't include all the confidential information perhaps at those meetings, but at some point you need to know, well, unless it's going to be held in confidence, because there is, as I say, commercially confidential and personal confidential information that we have in our budgets and in our written part of our plan. It deals with staffing, it deals about contracts, you know, for tenants and things like that. So we probably can present it at a global level. I think so. Yeah.
Just a summarised report for council's already required.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I mean, so I can understand the confidential side of things in terms of commercial business, but at some stage, council needs to know the figures.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're happy that council looks in detail at our business plan as well. And maybe that could be done with councillors and staff who come to one of our committee meetings when we've got a read or part of a visit from a delegation. So it's
Just can you confirm when your AGM is scheduled?
It's got to be after the preparation of our financial reports, which we get done each year by cuffs. This year it was delayed, so we didn't have our AGM until August, but that was a special year because of COVID. We're pretty prompt on that sort of thing. Our stuff is in within a week or so of the beginning of the year. So it really depends on cuts, but typically they've got it out.
We've had it as early as March before, which is brilliant.
April typically.
But yeah, it's just we push
Yeah.
to get it. March is quite a push to get it ready in time.
Yeah, because everybody's asking cuts for
Yeah, it's a bad time.
financial reports at that time.
Really, really good news too, Bruce, to hear that you got a potential person going into the cafe and opening in December. That's really good news. Pleasing, good stuff.
And what I can say, without saying who it is that it's sort of an established business which has got some grunt behind it and should be able to deal with the ups and downs of during the year. We've got that sort of experienced business people been in the game for a long time.
Well done.
And should be good.
Yeah.
Bruce, I was just going to mention too that we do, as an incorporated society, we're required to do the financial reporting and things when it becomes public information, so that the standard incorporated society requirements are always public after our AGM anyway.
So could you align the AGM to occur in April, for example, and then following the adoption, following the election of the governance group structure, whatever, for the year, then you come to the Community Development Committee towards the end of April?
Well,
with that same financial information, which is then publicly available, you're presenting that?
Yes, well, that deals with the performance over the calendar year previously up to the 31st December, but that's probably a good thing to look at because it is, so normally, yes, we would like to do it no later than April. And we'll press our accounts to do that. Get it ready in time.
Cool. So we'll go through your points now. A site visit of the committee to the theatre as soon as it can be arranged.
Absolutely.
All in agreement?
Yeah.
Confirmation of which councillors will be the key contacts with the theatre. Show of hands, who would like to receive the minutes of the management committee?
If you receive them, I think it works well with Latham, you and David continuing to.
You keep us in touch.
But I'd be very
You're all quite
interested
comfortable
to receive.
them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Will remain as key contacts about the committee to receive the minutes?
Yep.
We'll deal with emails and stuff after this. Calendar for attending community development committee meetings, so October and April. Happy? Agreement on the best process for handling the theatre's business plan and grant drawdowns. See that going forward that will be received October for the year following, and then in April any tweaks ahead of consultation with the community. I understand, and the committee, I think that also understands that it is being locked into the long-term plan. It's proposed to be locked into the long-term plan, the theatre's funding with CPI increases, estimated CPI increases for the duration of the plan. I'm not sure that we've dealt with the long-term plan anything around provision for infrastructure that you spoke to, Bruce. He's talked about maintenance and infrastructure. I would suggest that comes before November this year with any request, because you'll need it as part of the LTP preparation, won't you?
So what point is this talking to? Sorry.
Oh, I just picking
That's
up
an
on a
additional
comment
point.
Bruce made during his submission, or during his talk. He talked about maintenance and the like of the theatre, long-term issues.
This over and above the grant.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've raised the question in previous submissions to council, and it's not probably unique to the theatre. I mean, it could even be a fund which is added to each year and which is held by council and then released under, like a reserve fund and released under certain conditions. Perhaps not just to the theatre, but to, I mean, obviously we'd like our area side if possible. But, I mean, it must apply to other halls and things like that as well. We can't sort of deal with, they'll be all nicely maintained, I guess, after this year, but just dealing with contingencies is a big problem for organisations that can't, borrow money.
I guess if we want to get out of a reactive phase, I think the last year's felt quite reactive to the theatre. It'd be great for all of us to know what that forward maintenance plan needs to be achieved, in terms of, then at least we can have an informed debate around the table, because at the moment we don't know, but.
So we will refine what we've already got in our business plan, and you can use that as a basis for discussion.
People comfortable with that as part of when we go to the site visit, see the business plan and see a maintenance? Is it a maintenance plan? Is it an infrastructure?
Maintenance and plant replacement budget plan.
I would like us to, as a committee, to actually have some more discussion around that, for not just the theatre, but in general.
Community halls generally.
Yeah.
I think potentially be through the OTP workshops, through two workshops.
Okay. And what about the grants and stuff, so that we can get,
So that'll be through workshops as well.
So just.
and so when we become aware of particular grants or funding that might be applicable.
Oh, you mean other external funding?
Yes, yeah,
So-
I really would.
Sarah's our conduit generally for that. Anything that comes across my desk, I will also raise that.
And it is put out to the community.
Oh, no, it's just that Bruce just raised before about some funding that, had they have known about it, it would have been good that they could have tapped into that as well.
I
The
think
halls is a different kettle of fish completely.
Yeah. So
what actually happened there? Can you just enlighten us?
there's criteria put in terms of what you could apply for and what you couldn't apply for. So anything that had a commercial element to it wasn't eligible. So hence the reason we didn't approach Region Theatre,
No.
because they've got commercial, they're not council
Okay,
owned.
so you weren't aware of that?
No, and I guess our concern is the other districts, of course, funded each of their theatres and other halls that have a commercial side to their operation, because the commercial side in the case of our theatre is not about, personal gain for anybody, it's just to reduce the cost to the community of running the theatre. So in retrospect, just looking at the criteria and looking at actually what happened in terms of payouts, every other theatre on the West Coast, Reefton, Westport and Greymouth got substantial grants, and if we'd known about it, even if we'd been approached by council, at least we could have gone through the discussion on it, but we're
What grant is
This is the community halls and all memorials grant.
So they were obviously eligible for.
I don't know how they put across the line, so
They wrangled the system, so absolutely acknowledge what you're saying, Bruce.
Yeah.
And I think we have the infrastructure to, and I certainly received from Sarah the weekly, fortnightly mail out of the, known funds that become available, at least from time to time, discretionary, I'll call them PGF, whatever, shovel ready, war memorials and community hall funds. That's acknowledged and noted.
Yeah, because the community thinks of the hall as the theatre in many ways as its town hall, even though it's not owned by the council, it is owned by the community. It sort of did in fact fall from the criteria. It's just, even if we had the opportunity, part of the problem, we could have raised it, I guess, if we'd had the time to do it, but we were basically being, we were thinly resourced. We've been flat out negotiating contracts, dealing with broken windows, dealing with the whole COVID-19 thing. So we've missed it all as well. We just want to make the point really, it would be nice to be proactive.
I just want to highlight that we were required to pull this together within a week. So
Yeah.
4 days.
4 days.
Yeah.
So
Well, the Greymouth Theatre had 2 days and they got a $180,000 grant. So, they managed to get the quotes and everything within 2 days. So, and we're pretty good at doing that. We've done this before. So we don't want to cry over spilled milk. We're saying that we're pretty good at responding to those things. Hopefully there'll be another, bite at the cherry. And we're.
Well, I just think if there's future opportunities, certainly, and.
We're also very pleased to see that all these other halls have actually got money and more for us in here. Could I just clarify one thing, Councillor Murphy? Yes, so that previously with our business plan, we've just submitted it to the council staff and have acknowledged having received it, or maybe we've actually done this for a long time, but each year we've made application for a drawdown of our grant, and it's been paid out on invoice basically, and we're not, we don't disagree with the fact we should provide a business plan, but could it be sufficient to provide it to the staff so they can say they've received the business plan, and then the discussion about the contents of the business plan is whatever next meeting there is of the community development committee, because in a way that would be most convenient to us. Because I presume the council is not going to, it would be helpful to us if you want to sign off on our business plan and commit yourself to it. But it seems to me that we just need to make sure we've checked that box. There's a serious business plan there. The staff will be looking at it, I guess, in detail, asking silly questions. But does it need to wait for one of those meetings of the Community Development Committee? Or could we have it approved minutes just as soon as we can get it in after the beginning of the financial year?
I'll look at that, Bruce, for you.
Yeah. I don't see
I don't see
any
a
need for
problem
us
with
to, I think the staff would confidently manage it, I'm sure, unless any councillor wants to sign off on it.
That's fine.
But going forward, it'll be quite aligned to this meeting anyway. So it'll be just this year, potentially it's an anomaly. But I think our intent with the adoption of the annual plan was to get that money to the theatre as quick as possible, so we don't want to act as any roadblock, handbrake, yeah.
Through the chair, what I suggest, we will delegate to myself to work with the chair of Region Theatre to come up with a confirmed process and agreed way in terms of payment structure.
Happy with that, everyone?
Yeah.
Yep. And the last thing, the style of reports. Are people happy with this sort of highlights, lowlight reporting format? Attendance through the door gives us tracking. I appreciate there isn't too much in here around the financials, but would anyone like that information?
We could add a summary, because I think it is relevant. We just didn't have it at the time we had to table this report, we didn't provide it tonight. But as I said, in general terms, we were able to show, based on our predictions, that we were going to have a small surplus at the end of December and at the end of June.
Might I just suggest with that too, with sending through any financial reporting, these trending reports are very, very good and, much easier to follow sometimes than the other more comprehensive ones. Like this was great, the one that you've actually put in here, based on the paid movies and event attendance.
In turn for you, Chairman. I think what's most relevant too is obviously financial performance is important, but as far as the community is concerned, it's the amount of community use the theatre gets, which people are interested in, or if there's a funder like the Government West Coast gives us money to develop a new projector and so on in the Reynolds room. They want to know what the response has been, not just financially, but in particular, how much more use the theatre's got. And so the easiest figures, well, I should say easiest, it's not actually simple to keep track of the numbers using the theatre, because while our ticketing system, of course, deals with everybody who pays, half the use of the theatre is non-paid attendance through things like Anzac Day or carol singing and so on. And so we find ourselves that's the most valuable information, which is what this graph shows, attendances. And obviously, the money follows that.
Thank you so much for presenting this evening. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to the successful adoption of the business plan and then seeing you all in April, if not before, for a tour of the theatre.
Well, that tour of the theatre would happen quite
soon. Quite soon.
Just to the chair, who's going to organise that? Thanks.
It will be done.
Just before a good movie.
Well, I was actually thinking some blockbusters you could stream the council meeting. Live stream.
I've got 50 seats and we can put another 60 seats on the floor, so we could probably get that.
Probably need more seats than that.
Hey, thank you so much. Councillor, to move and second that presentation from Bruce Watson, the chairperson, will particular region theatre be received.
Yep.
Move Councillor David, seconded Councillor Neil, all those in favour?
Aye.
And the actions associated with that form part of the action list.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dawn.
We now move into the Kamara Residence Trust, pages 11 through 18, the PowerPoint presentation that we're going to receive from Julie, the owner this evening, in relation to the work of the KRT. Kia ora and welcome to the Community Development Committee.
Kia ora katana. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to speak and not actually be begging for anything. Just be celebrating where we are in our community, and it's really nice to be able to be in that position. So it's been, I think, 4 years since we were up here presenting. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm the chairperson of, it's really distracting seeing myself there. I'm the chairperson of the Kamara Residence Trust. I've been involved with the trust since 2011 as the secretary, and I've been the chair for the last since 2016. Sorry, Sarah, I'm not going to be able to look at you because I can't.
Just look at this.
Oh, look at that, okay. So impersonal. And Fiona Pollard has come with me. She's the treasurer, the previous chair, and she's the project manager of the Chinese Reserve project. So I've just put together a presentation and I've said we're more than just the Chinese Reserve project, because over the years we've got a lot of publicity around the Chinese Reserve project. And there's a lot more to us than that. And that's what we're here to tell you about tonight. And then we'll wrap it up with stuff about the Chinese Reserve, because it is a big part of what we're doing at the moment and a very ambitious project for us. So I guess I'll just say, so we're a charitable trust, and our mission statement is to enhance and preserve the Kamara community, including heritage aspects, beautification of the town, improved infrastructure, and social activities and services by charitable means. So we started back in 2008 because at the time the government agencies were interested in Kamara because of the high level of deprivation, and Housing New Zealand came in and insulated the houses, put on new roofs on the houses, especially for the elderly. And part of the kaupapa of that initiative was that there was an organization formed that was an umbrella organization in terms of a direct contact for the council. And at that time in the community, there were, and there still are, many different community groups, but they all had a specific focus. And so you had the fire brigade and the sports ground committee and the hall committee, but there was nothing looking at the whole of Kamara. And so that's where our trust began. We take a community-led development approach. We have learned a lot over the years about what works in our community. And we've learned through trial and error. We've definitely made some mistakes, and through it we've learned what works for us. And one of the things that works is taking it slow, being inclusive. We make sure that just because we know what we're doing, we don't assume that the rest of the community knows. We do regular updates in the Gold Trails, which is the monthly newsletter, and we invite people to our general meetings. Whether or not people come, that's their choice, but we know that we're doing our bit to make people feel welcome and included. Let's see. So our membership, which is quite exciting to share tonight, is at 103. So that's within our Kamara community boundary. Back in 2014, it was 63. So we've actually grown a lot. And for a small town, it's really encouraging to have that support. It doesn't mean that we have 103 volunteers who come out and rock up to our events, but it does mean that people support what we're doing. We have people volunteer on all different levels of engagement and how they're comfortable. And lately we've been seeing a lot of new faces, so new people moving to the community and deciding to take part and get involved. And a lot of that's been through working bees, which is really fantastic way to get to know new people. So we do projects to connect. So that's a big focus for us, is to connect people in our community. We've created and are just about updating a Kamara brochure that lists the businesses, and it also has, you can see the cycle trail and heritage panels on the back side. We've started a Kamara Facebook page that we manage, which has quite, I think it has 1,200 followers, maybe a bit more. And we also manage, one of our volunteers manages the Kamara website. And that's been really helpful for our community, especially we've heard the feedback that some people have actually moved to Kamara when they're looking at places to live, and they find the website and they think, oh, that actually looks like a nice place to be. And then we support the Kamara Gold Trails, which is, it's an independent project, but we support it through fundraising and managing the accounts for the advertisement. For that one, we also, we're a point of contact for the council and anything else that's happening in the region in terms of consultation. So I make a point of saying, hey, don't forget about us. We want to be involved in this. And I've done Emma before, is organized meetings where the community can come and have a say. Doesn't mean people necessarily come. Sometimes I'm the only one there and I get to eat all the biscuits, but it's fantastic to be able to give people the opportunity. We also started a buddy system over the COVID lockdown, which Fiona led, which was fantastic. We got it going in a few days, and it was just a really simple way of what worked in our community. We knew that it wouldn't work for there to be a big managed approach coming down from here, telling people to do anything. So we actually just talked to the people in the community and said, hey, if you have neighbors who are isolated, can you check on these people? And we created a list, actually, a confidential list of the vulnerable people in our community. So mostly the ones who are living on their own, and people who already knew them or live near them would actually check on them in a safe way each day. So that was a really positive way to support our community. And then we've got another way that we connect with the council is through the endowment fund. So this has been a really hot topic in the past, and it actually still is. If you want to go to Kamara and bring up the endowment fund at the hotel once it opens again, you could have some lovely discussions, lots of different opinions. But the where it stands at the moment is that there was a council meeting on the 29th of September 2016. That was the last time we were standing there, I think. And so the resolution was made that council staff undertake consultation with the wider Kamara community as defined by the Kamara community rate geographic boundary on how the remainder of the Kamara endowment fund will be allocated. So we've just sat on that resolution, and now we'd actually like for council staff to undertake that process. We're happy to support the council, but it needs to be led from the council and also in a way that works and engages our community, because it's you'll get lots of engagement, and that's really good because we want to move forward. It's a bit of an elephant in the room at the moment, and there is around $356,000 in that account at the moment. So it can really benefit our community. So I can email someone about that to start a paper trail. Thank you. And projects to honor our heritage. So Kamara has a rich heritage. We have 5th generation residents that are still living in Kamara today. Our heritage information panels, there are about 24 really large ones throughout the town and 11 smaller ones. So that's something that Carrie Fitzgibbon put into place, initiated when she was the chairperson. And they draw a lot of interest in the community. They're really helpful for visitors and for locals alike, especially school children. I know with my kids, we go past them and they'll ask questions, and it's fantastic to even figure out how the town used to be situated. With the main street used to be a different street, and for them to actually get their heads around it. So we've had a lot of positive feedback about the heritage panels, and we've actually recently had another family come forward saying, hey, we'd like to do a panel, and our community trust who have led the Coast to Coast in all the previous years are wanting to put together a panel as well. And that's where the Chinese Miners Memorial Reserve Project comes in, because when Carrie was doing the panels, the heritage panels, there was a lot of information about the Chinese community. And it was also a time when we were looking at beautifying our town, and there was a bit of a wasteland area when you first entered the town, which we see as the gate of Westland. And we had thought, still remember the meeting, thought about what we could do to beautify the entrance of our town. There was talk about a big gold pan or lots of different ideas. And then it, over times in a few different meetings, turned into the Chinese Reserve Project. So that's how that fits within our trust. And we have projects to preserve. So we are really proud of our town. We have regular working bees. We organize a Keep New Zealand Beautiful cleanup day each year. I think that we've done 4 now. And thank you to the council who always dumps the rubbish, or allows us to dump it free of charge. So it's really fantastic to have that support from the council. We also have people contacting us directly either through Facebook page or just through email saying, hey, there's actually been some fly tipping, and they tell us the location, and we contact the council, and the council's been really supportive of removing it and also trying to figure out who's doing it. So we've done a bit of work with the school kids around looking at the issue of dumping in our area, because unfortunately a lot of the dumping has children's items in it as well. And so we really would hope that the families aren't passing on the tradition to their kids, and that the kids can actually say, hey, that's actually not okay. So we have been having quite a few working bees lately, and one of the reasons for that is because we had to cancel the huli, and also looking at other events that we may or may not be able to do depending on COVID level restrictions. And so we thought, well, maintenance, as long as we're, above, low enough at the appropriate level, we could actually have working bees. And it's been fantastic to see people coming out on a Sunday, is when we've been doing them, to give back something. And we always have cups of tea and biscuits afterwards, and some people stay and have a chat and some people don't, and that's fine. But it's also creating that culture of let's look after our own part of the world. We liaise with corrections so that they have PD workers coming out and taking care of swimming baths and other tasks. And ultimately, when we have the Chinese Reserve in a state of maintenance, then that relationship is formed, and we'll look at that again with them. And we also really want to preserve our people in Kamara. And so we were gifted from Rotary, Greymouth Rotary, an AED. And so Kamara Residents Trust is the owners of the AED, and we've set aside funds for when we need to get new batteries and pads and all that in place for when it's used or when it's not used. And the Kamara Fire Brigade has agreed to maintain it when they maintain their own. And the hall has agreed to have it on the outside. And we had a lovely community volunteer who actually volunteered through his business to ensure the AED. So that's a fantastic asset to our community. I worked with Greymouth Rotary around a couple of CPR and AED training days that had really good attendance as well. So people in the community know how to use it. And we've also been working on a speed feedback unit, which is my project, which is going really, really slowly. But it is still on the cards, and every AGM I say that this is going to be the year that I do it, and now I'm saying that this is going to be the year that I do it. But basically we had one up in town that on the eastern entrance that had been borrowed, and now it's been broken for quite a while, and we want to put in funding for our own speed feedback unit and looking at the appropriate paths. We have the data. It seems to me a little bit ridiculous that a small community has to fundraise for their own speed feedback unit, but as far as where I'm getting, that is actually the case. And it sounds like NZTA doesn't have any money, which I think you were talking about earlier. They're a bit maybe strapped. So anyways, that's something that I need to focus on, because it is really unsafe on the main street, and there are kids, which is fantastic, going to school and tourists coming through, and lots of people on cycle trail and bikes, and it's just not safe enough. So fundraising. We do a lot of fundraising, and I'm actually really proud of the amount that we've been able to fundraise over the years. We created the Kamara bags, which before the eco bags were quite as popular as they are now. We have those bags that anyone can buy at Masala when it's open again, or to contact us directly. We also have many raffles, sausage sizzles. The gala day is a great way to raise funds, and liaising with the, working with the Kamara Racing Club around managing the traffic and the camping for the coast to coast. We've done that in the last 4 years, I think, and that's been another good money earner, as well as the risque bingo that we had a few years ago now specifically for the Chinese Reserve project. We also apply for COGS funding each year, and that covers some community events, but mostly our running costs. And we have a bookkeeper, and that Fiona works closely with as the treasurer. And we also have our charities status performance report that we do each year, and basically just the bank, like all those things that aren't really very exciting to fundraise for as a community. We figure if we can actually get all that sorted, some health and safety things, then we can actually fundraise for the community in ways that they can see the benefit of what they're actually doing the work for. And we manage the Township Development Fund from the council. So we've been doing that for many years now, maybe 7, maybe 8. And we've developed a really robust process around that. Again, one of the things that we learned from trial and error, because we were accused of making all the decisions for the community, and we didn't like that and actually thought that wasn't fair to do it that way. So we've created a process that I think we've done a few, maybe 4 or 5 years, 4 years now, doing a lot for 4 years. And where we put it in the gold trails a couple of months leading up to the allocation meeting, which is generally in August. And then we send a letter to all community groups in Kamara, inviting them to apply to the fund. And then they have to actually come to the meeting with their application to speak to it, but then it means that everybody at the meeting decides on where the money goes together. And that process has worked really well. And so that the Township Development Fund has supported the Kamara School, the pool in the community. It's gone to the Kamara Junction community group. It's gone to the Kamara Racing Club, to the hall, to the sports ground. To us, it's spread out really well. And we've had really good feedback on that process. So, I think that's it for funding. So one of our volunteers coined the phrase that we do fundraising and we do fundraising, and I thought that was fantastic. And my husband this morning really sheepishly said, "Do you want me to tell you that you have a spelling mistake?" I said, "It's not a spelling mistake. We've made up our own word, and it's called fundraising." Because we really have it in our minds when we're doing an event, if it's going to be for fundraising purposes or if it's going to be for fundraising. And so a lot of our events, pretty much all of our events except for the band part of the hoolies are free, and sometimes the food is free. And generally, if we're doing a fun event, we're just wanting to make enough money to cover our costs, and anything else that we do make goes back in the kitty for that actual event so that we can continue running the event. So we've got quite a healthy fund in terms of the Gala Day Fund, the Hoolie Fund, the Midwinter Event Fund, and all those type of things, so that when it comes time to run it, we can actually run it and just focus on the fun part of it. So we've got some midwinter events. We do a midwinter bonfire. The first one that we did, we had the Ngāti Waiwai Kapahaka group come and perform, and that was more of a Matariki celebration, which was fantastic, with lantern making prior to it. And then we've also got the hoolies there, where we've had kids discos before the hoolie, and then the kids leave and the band comes and the adults drink and have fun, and it's a really good way to connect. And we tied in the last couple of years, although last year we had to cancel it, we tied it in with Neighbour Day Aotearoa. And so we looked at it in terms of an all ages event and an opportunity to connect with what's happening nationally in terms of Neighbours Day, but also let's connect as a community in a fun way. And then we've got some pictures of the Gala Day there, linking in with the school. We did a Mighty Mow competition this year, which Jane was one of our judges and had a lovely mow. And then we've also done poetry competitions and other scavenger hunts, things to make it really fun for the kids. The benefit of tying in with the school is that often the parents come along to the event where maybe they wouldn't otherwise, but because their child has a mustache they have to wear or a poem they have to read, then they're more interested in coming, and it's generally a really fun day out. I think that's me. So I'll pass it on to Fiona. And then, well done. No, that's all right. Our most ambitious project yet, the Kamara Chinese Miners Memorial Reserve. So Fiona will tell you about that, and I'll hold the poster.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, everybody. The opportunity to give you an update on our most ambitious project. So we are a small community that has street faith, and Council, as a key partner, have been on our journey since we started this one. It started 7 years ago, just when I arrived in Kamara, I don't know about that late, and it is to honour our Chinese gold miners. They come from the Guangdong province in China, and we have a good connection with the Guangdong Association in Christchurch. And we got our items imported from the Guangdong province in China for that. In 2016, we secured all the land and we created a reserve. It's a gazetted reserve under the Reserves Act, local purpose. And we've got an MOU with the council to actually establish the reserve, the garden, and maintain it. So that's all done and dusted, and I can send you copies. Since the project started, we've raised over 430k, and we've done a lot of the fundraising, community fundraising on the coast. We've also been to Wellington, Auckland and Christchurch a couple of times and done formal kind of dinner auction fundraising with the Chinese community. And we've done 8 formal applications, some successful and some not successful. And just recently we've had quite a lengthy, frustrating 2-year break where we stalled because we needed engineer plans. And it really frustrated our volunteers and our Chinese community and everybody. But we have maintained that we're going to create a safe public space with duty of care under the Health and Safety Act. We have very heavy granite features. We want to make sure they don't topple over. And we also want a quality garden. It's a gateway feature for Westland, and we don't want to lower that standard. So it has meant we've had to be patient, but we want something that we can all be proud of after all this work. But it's also made the stalls, given our volunteers a really good chance to have a break, because there's been a hell of a lot of volunteer hours put into this project. And it gave our community time to settle down and heal too, because it has been a rocky road. But we now have engineer plans, and we have regrouped. We've gathered our enthusiasm and our energy, and we're re-engaging again with you guys and with the Chinese community and with our local community. We're now in a procurement process, and basically we're going to start from this end. This is the road. And this is a pond and boardwalk. Basically, we need heavy truck access. So we're going to start at this end and move forward. Hopefully we can have enough funding to get to the link tank and actually have it up with the roof on. That's our goal. So we're working with the procurement process to do that. One of the things we want to make sure is we've got so much money, we know it's going to take this much, but we've only got this much in the bank. We're not committing a contractor to do any more than what we've got funds for. We've got to keep our trustees safe. And unfortunately with COVID-19 we were impacted as well, because all the contractors are flat out with much more sexier things than ours, but we're going to try and keep ours going. So we're working quite hard with the 2 contractors that we've identified that have got skills. So, yeah, touch wood. And of course we've got the ongoing hurdle of funding, because we have only this much left. And that's the nature of this community project. We'll only do so much and then we'll wait, go and fundraise, do the next step. And that's what we're going to do all the way through. So we are a shovel-ready project. We have resource consent, we have engineer plans, we have designer plans, we have the land, we have the authority. So if you come across anything, any other funding opportunities, just let us know. And it is quite hard because this is a different kind of project and it doesn't quite fit the formal funding application criteria. So it is quite difficult for us to access the normal channels. That's what we've found over the last 7 years. But we're still motivated and we've been very encouraged with the recent work and be on site. We had it 2 weekends ago. We had 15 people turn up. We had volunteers that have been there since day dot in this process, Kerry Fitzgibbons and friends. And we also had new volunteers that have just moved to town, family of 5. We had 2 teenagers helping us. I mean, how often do you get teenagers turning up to a working bee? It was really cool. And the cup of tea sitting on the rocks, it's, sitting on that gravel pad, sitting on the rocks, and we had this out and talking about things we can do ourselves, but having to always temper it with, we want a quality product. We cannot go and get the concrete mixer and start, doing it ourselves. And that's always been the tension of this project. but it's one we always try and manage. So yeah, we want to beautify our town and the Westland District, and eventually get to the stage where we just go do a bit of wading and sit on that Lington and actually enjoy it, because it's actually a really good spot out of the wind and it's lovely. Any questions?
I've just got some through the chair. So in regards to speed cameras, have you approached council for assistance in this before?
I have recently, and yeah, I haven't really got that far, to be honest.
So recently we've been successful helping Harry get
Well, and I think, and Sarah, did you say that that was through their township development fund?
Yes.
But
Or was it
I've
in
got some
Carl
funds, yeah.
Jackson?
Yeah.
But I think the installation that
Yeah.
NZTA coming to do that as part of their contribution.
Okay, and NZTA did help with the previous road safety coordinator organised the putting up the last one that was temporary. And NZTA did help with that.
Councillor Kogan.
I've just got few things through the chair. First of all, congratulations on your PowerPoint presentation. It was actually put together so well, really professional. And I actually got your message through the fundraising, but actually I looked at it even a little bit different too, being on many fundraising committees over the years. You know, even though I know that they are testing and very full on and lots of work goes into them, there is a lot of fun that you actually get out of them as well, you know, as the money too. So I thought the concept that you come up with that was
It wasn't
really,
me, it was another volunteer.
really, well, I really loved it. I actually really loved it. I used that.
But it's quite helpful with events, especially when it comes to the gala, and we have to actually remind ourselves that we actually want to make some money.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that really is the focus of what we're doing. And it is fun, and certainly connect with the people that you're doing the work with.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something like the gala day, which is a community event, but it's a lot of work, and we actually really want to make some money.
But there's so many benefits as well as that through fundraising, you know, being, like I was heavily involved with a lot of the school groups over the years, and, you know, you spoke about the teenagers turning up, you know, the benefits that came out of them and how much they grew from actually being involved in that sort of stuff, and, you know, taking responsibility really for that fundraising.
I guess one of the things for us as well as a trust is we've grown good organisational skills. We can run events. Like I was even thinking we could actually market ourselves to run your event.
Yeah.
Because we've got a team and we've been doing it for, you know, quite a few years now, and we're quite good at it.
Yeah.
And it's great.
You're actually very good at it. And I'll tell you something else that you're very good at, is your Gold Trails newsletter is so professionally well done. And you know what, I've often printed it off and shown it to other people and gone, if you want an example, like I find them great. I actually look forward to getting them every month so I can kind of see what you guys are up to. But the way you've set it up, and there's just so much, you can just almost feel the community engagement.
And that's not us, so that's completely the volunteer. So I'll pass on the feedback, because it's been a few different people over the years.
Brilliant.
But that's somebody that volunteers, I think, about 10 to 15 hours once a month.
Yeah.
And they have to do it in one chunk as well, because they get everything in. It's, you know, it's no doing it a few days here and a few days there. It's actually a good chunk of someone's weekend.
Yeah.
So I'll pass on the feedback.
Yeah, because I don't think you could not only run events, you guys certainly know up there how to run a community. Like the drive you guys have shown with all of the different aspects of fundraising you've done over the years, and now with, you know, that Chinese gardens, I just think you're a real credit, and you're exceptionally lucky to have so many keen people like you giving up, because it is a lot of volunteer time. Like, I totally get that. So, yeah, I really want to reinforce to you guys in the community, you actually make council's job easy to a degree, because, you know, you take so much pride and responsibility for where you guys are. And yeah, I think there's lots of other communities that could actually learn, not saying that they don't take pride, but, you know, they could also learn a lot from you. Fiona, good to hear though as well that, yeah, you just, even though, like you said, you've got the funds and, you know, the Chinese gate, it's going to look amazing when it's finished, but very responsible and practical with your vision around do it as you go and don't overcommit. You know, I mean, here we are in an instance where we've just gone through, you know, something that nobody in the world anticipated with COVID, you know, and so making a call like that to protect the trustees without losing the vision is fabulous. It just reminds me, your monthly meetings are,
Oh, our next one's not till December, but you're on the list?
I don't think I've,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah,
Well,
can you just flick, sorry, can you just flick,
I'll make
yeah.
sure that you're, because I think,
Yeah.
because, the idea was that you were going to be invited to the general meeting, so we divided up our meetings into governance meetings and general meetings. And so the general meetings are the public meetings where we focus on consulting with the community if there's something that's come up, or events or projects. And then the governance meetings are more of the boring type of stuff that when other people come, they just glaze over and are really bored and don't ever want to come back to another meeting. So those ones that we reserve for the trustees. So you get an invitation to the general meeting.
Yeah, you just flick it out, because I know that Jane, you know, we talked about it anyway some time ago.
And you were going to come, and then I think COVID happened.
COVID actually shut down so much, but now that it's over, you know, like I'm really keen, as I'm sure. And more will better. Yeah, so great news. Yeah, it's such a great news story.
You've got a fan.
You've got a
You've got a big fan in council when there's council.
Really inspirational. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Councillor Coder? No, all good. Councillor Neal?
Similar comments to Jenny there. How lucky is Kamara having you guys? And I love the way you can see the positives, even when it's something might be considered a negative. They actually always seem to be able to come up with a positive for that, which is a great way to go and how inspiring for your community. Do you get volleys from outside Kamara for things like Coast to Coast and Kamara races?
Well, not the Kamara races, but with the Coast to Coast. So that's actually a point that I forgot to put on here that I missed over. Is that the Kamara Community Trust, who has led the banquet and the fundraising for the community since I think 1983, they're actually winding down, and they've asked KRT to take the lead with fundraising through the Coast to Coast now. And so I've been liaising with the Coast to Coast race directors and organisers around how we're going to do that this year. And then we've actually, I think through those conversations with the racing club around Coast to Coast stuff, we've actually just been asked if we could help man the gates at AgFest. And so that's a fantastic way to make money.
So will you get people from outside Kamara as well for those sorts of things?
We don't generally. And we really actually, we put stuff in the gold trails, always asking other people to be involved, but we pretty much focus on the people in the community that we know want to do things, or that, joined up as members. Because the last thing that we want to do is to make people feel like they shouldn't be doing anything.
It's very impressive with such a really relatively small population to produce as much as you do.
The different ages of people who are involved. And
what's the role at the school?
I have been teaching up at the school, so that's been a really easy relationship. And
I mean, what's the number on the role? Sorry.
Just the relationship. They're actually getting up there. I think they're around. Last I knew they were around like early 40s, maybe 42.
Right. Wow.
So yeah,
and the real estate's going really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite a healthy community at the moment. It's really cool.
It's fabulous. Yeah, and like Jenny said, fantastic report, great visuals, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Neil.
Yeah, just support both Councillor Kogan and Neil. I mean, it's like, you know, you guys, you know, you said before, and I can understand how proud you are of how things have changed up there. And in terms of the heritage and the beautification and the infrastructure and the social activities, you know, and look, I have no doubt that your team and the volunteers has helped shape and the culture up there. You know, it's really, really good to see. As I said, every time you go through there, you just see the improvement. And today I'll just come through and I'll see some stuff out at Dillmanstown there, some beautification happening out there. So it's fantastic, great stuff.
Thank you.
Very impressive presentation, team. Well done for your work to date. I remember those meetings 7 years ago, and I feel very long in the tooth.
We all do.
Total funds raised, sorry, was 400 403k.
430.
30, yeah, 430. And what's the estimated cost to complete the garden project?
That's a question.
Sorry, I get right into the detail.
Yeah, it's unknown at the moment.
Estimate, sort of
We
ballpark.
haven't really got an estimate, like, we know the front wall will probably cost 100k, that'll be the last thing that happens. The paving could be another 100k, don't know yet till we get a quotes. At the moment, we're concentrating on this, this structures, getting everything, and then the planting. So maybe we get to that point and then we just gravel it and do the wall later, yeah. So we don't have an estimate, but I'd love to get like another 150 to 200 up the sleeve, because I know that we could get the project finished and with any left over, we'd make those. So yeah, my goal is to get another 150 to 200 and see how far we get with that. Yeah. So, but once I get the quotes from our two contractors that are working on it now, we'll have this next stage firmed up.
And that's been a challenge with fundraising as well, is that we need the quotes to do the fundraising.
Yeah, yeah. So we got quotes for planting, so it was like 20 to 30k, but that was a few years ago now.
It'll be going up.
Yeah, yeah.
So if an anonymous donor gave 200k, it would complete the project.
It would be getting good, really close. Yeah. Maybe with that.
We would love to be able to have one of those, you know, meters where you can show the goal and you can show how much, you know, and we've thought about it in the past, but we just, until we get to a different part of the project, we can't get a quote, and we certainly don't want to put our foot in our mouth.
Yeah.
And regret saying anything.
Yeah.
And because I often drive through in the evening, and one thing I've noticed for Kamara is those amazing entrance signs, but they're lit by, I think, halogen lights, old lights, and they're kind of, for newer vehicles, they're actually quite dim. Like, they don't like, it's like, wow, it's Kamara. So who's responsible for that?
You guys.
That's the answer I wanted to hear. Thank you very much. So can we please
throw that boomerang again?
they need to be LED lit, because they are spectacular, and I remember when they first were lit and it was like, but now it's just like a faded away, so it'd be great to get
Not sure we own it. Check it out.
We'll find out about that. But I'm just thinking about.
I put through a service request and then the light was working again, so some magical people on the other end of a service request should happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
One final question, sorry. In terms of the Township Development Fund, do you look out further than 12 months? Or what I'm saying here is there a 3-year program of work that fund's aiming towards, or is it?
Township Development.
What I'm trying to do with the communities is think longer term, and if you've got a project of significance, that fund could be going towards any community support. Right, it sounds like you've got a very good working process going anyway, but that it's only short term. But if you had a longer stretch in terms of committed that fund further out.
Well, we do allocate, like even the last 2 years, actually, there's been a few $1,000s that haven't been allocated, so that the projects coming in were actually less than the total amount, and so we've earmarked the other money as for identified project needs. And this year, because I think there was about $9,000 that was unallocated because we used what was not allocated for the previous year, is that we're actually, this year only because of COVID stuff, we're having another township development funding allocation meeting. I think we said around, I don't know to see, so in about 6 months' time. So basically, if there isn't a project, the projects don't cover, then there's something like a pity, but it really depends on what people bring to the.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm looking at is if you had a set of projects and you define, okay, this is priority 1, 2, and 3, and lock it out over a long term period of time. The other thing about the township development fund is it's your number in terms of the value, so it can go up and down based on what the community wants. It's not.
Oh, really?
So it comes through the annual plan process. If you want to change it, obviously it goes through a rating process and a consultation process to increase or decrease it. But that's something to bear in mind.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time and your energy for the Kamara community. I'm sure they appreciate it as much as we do.
Thank you for your support.
Thank
Okay, so before we move to our next presentation, someone would like to move that we resolve, that the presentation from Julie Rowe and be at the Kamara Residence Trust be received.
Yeah.
Councillor Cogan, second Councillor Neal, all those in favour?
Yeah.
Right. And I've got 3 actions: replacing entrance lights. That's number 1. No. Investigating alternative funding for the value of 200k, so that's on our radar somewhere. If it does fit a shovel-ready criteria, and there's entrance 50k flashing signs.
Probably a bigger action to chair is the consultation process for the.
Yeah, that's right.
Kamara Endowment Fund.
Yes.
Kamara Endowment Fund consultation commences.
Which may answer your second point there.
Yeah, that was nice.
Not so sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tam. Okay.
Just on those lights, I think not really to be discussed here, but just can you check the angle of them, because sometimes they're quite bright straight into your eyes. So I was surprised to hear you say they were dim.
No, they're dim on the sign. The signs don't look like they're lit up.
But they
look
actually
like lights going everywhere else apart from the
straight into the
signs.
driver, so it just needs to.
There's an issue with the lights, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Needs to be.
Just people around us. Thank you, Sarah.
Kia ora and welcome everybody, and Julie Lavers from West Street speaking to us in part around the Cactus Youth Program, but also the Council Youth Development Strategic Plan, and how long's a piece of string? Lots of time. Thanks for taking the time to present to us this evening.
Tēnā no koutou, no mātou no māua no te whiwhi te tūmutuki mūra koutou, ki te whakamohi atu hea nā mea o mahana e māua, I roto tēnei hapori. It's a bit of an honour and privilege to stand here to just go over the Council Youth Development Strategic Plan, and more importantly, some of the work we do with Cactus. I'm going to leave most of the talking to the person who does most of the work, and some of those people aren't here today, which are the people on the ground. I know Peter, who does a lot of the work here, and now we've got more staff that are helping us. So our success is basically through our staff, and I prefer that. I leave those people who actually do the work to explain to you exactly what we're doing. I support it 100% and happy to answer questions later, but I prefer that Julia, who is our education manager, who does all of the work around our cactus, to present this to you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, I'm Julia. I've actually put the Youth Development Strategic Plan at the start of my cactus presentation because 3 years ago when I started at West Street, I was asked to present it. It is the Western District Council Strategic Plan for Youth, and my predecessor had helped with the process of that. So for those of you that don't know about it, I've just put a kind of a highlight there. I've got who are our youth. Whoops. So I've got just some stats here. I would say that they're not up to date, and that's something that we're working work on. But that's, you know, for us at Westbury, we are Puna Kaipira House, but this presentation is about the Westbury youth, and that's some of the data that we use. I would say, particularly with Māori youth, our percentage would be higher than that now. That was from a few years ago. This is the vision that the Western District Council has for youth. I think particularly the mission statement at the bottom, to build Western as a region where young people can thrive, develop, take opportunities, contribute and feel valued by the community, is quite pertinent at this time with everything that we've been through. Okay, lots of people ask me this question. I can actually say it off by heart now, it's taken me a couple of years. I did find some information earlier on that had correctional in it. We've never used that term, combined adolescent challenge training unit support. And we really want to get away from any kind of thing that talks about correctional, you know, and that kind of thing. I don't know where that came from, I just found it on the slide. It was started here in 1998 by a community constable. Lots of people working doing silly stuff around town. So he started up Cactus here. I remember years ago when I moved here seeing lots of kids running around Casswell in the dark, quite early in the morning. Yeah, so it was all about a good physical workout, including breakfast and some gear. So it just gained a lot of momentum. And that was way back in 1998. Yeah, after he left for Australia, lots of lack of funding, etc., it stopped in 2014. It carried on at South Western Area School. I've been teaching in South Western Area School, and so my perspective of Cactus is quite different to what it is now in terms of it was a voluntary thing that happened at lunchtimes, and we had someone that would come down. Lots of teachers took part, kids of any age could do it. The community advisor, Derek from Western District Council, approached Westbury, said he'd secured funding for the next year and asked us to facilitate, and there was just a taste tester at the local high school who said, yeah, let's go for it. 2018, which is when I started at REAP, there's Pizza on the left, who's our leader for Cactus. We also paid a Year 13 student to take Cactus at South Western Area School in Harry. Putta started just with 1 Year 9 and 10 class, and he would do that for a few hours a week at school during school time, and then halfway through the year he'd start with a new group if they wanted to, or carry on with the same students. It was quite different to how we did it at SOAS because they opted into it as a subject. Takes a lot of work for us to maintain that relationship with the school, and we're really proud of that relationship, but yeah, the kids have it as a subject there. So that's how we started, with just 1 Year 9 and 10 class and South Western Area School lunchtime sessions. We have a lot of goals, which you can read on the screen. I guess whare takawhā for us is really important, the four sides of our house. So it's not just about physical. A lot of people think it's just about us getting the kids to sweat, making their life uncomfortable. It really is about emotional, spiritual whānau. It's about us talking to the kids all the time about owning their behaviour and about being part of a group, setting their own goals. But yeah, it's kind of a long list of goals, but they work for it. Every term we do a longest day challenge. This is getting more challenging as we get more and more classes, so they can be anywhere from 6 to 11 hours long. The one we did a couple of weeks ago, we dropped the kids at Kamara and they took the bike track back through Cowboy Paradise and back. We didn't get back to bacon sandwiches until about 7 p.m. Lost a few things on the bikes on the way, so it takes a lot of organisation. This was a long one we did last year, where we took the waka out on Kanieri, and then the students ran from Kanieri all the way to Milltown, got on rafts, went up to Aotearoa, and then ran along the beach back. I think that was the 11-hour one. Yeah, that was a good one. So we do all different kinds. We've gone to Ross and used the part cycle trail, part running. Yeah, they're something the kids aim for. We do cross-pollination days where we try to combine South Western Area School, Puketuka Primary, Western High School, sometimes Greymouth High School. They run their own cactus program separately from ours. This particular day, which was last year, we had a girls team from Western High School separate from the boys team, so we had about 4 different teams that day. This year, South Western Area School organised it for us, including tractor drag race, which we got to pull the tractors and gumboot throwing and all kind of real good South Western flavour to it, which we took a van load of Western High School kids down to do. So yeah, last year was our big year. We took on 2 year 7 and 8 classes per 2 terms, and we went to the primary school and said, would you like us to do it with your tamariki? We really wanted to use the high school kids to mentor the primary school kids. I guess underlying, we really wanted that transition into high school to be smoother if we get into the primary schools in this district. We chose the name for the primary school, Masapakori, for those reasons. It seems to fit quite nicely. I'm sure you all know where South Western Area School is, centre of the universe. So we had Joe, Year 13 student, taking cactus. We paid him, I think, 3 hours per week last year to run that. He's gone on to be to do naval navigation in the Navy now, actually, which is a real treat for us to write a reference for him from all the work that he does. We've got Greta and Alex doing it this year. They're Year 12 students, so they got to organise the cross-pollination day. We pay them 2 hours each to run lunchtime sessions, and at the end of the year, if they have at least 100 sessions from any South Western Area School students, they go to Resolution Bay and the Marlborough Sounds for a week of getting out in the tents and going camping as their treat and their reward for committing to cactus. Yeah, so this year is, despite COVID, it's been really successful. We've got senior students now. We've got a Year 11 class, which some of the students have been with us for the 3 years now. That's been a big lot of communication with the school because it's hard work for kids to take on cactus with NCA. So we've offered credits with them through youth work, which is through careers course. Definitely have a lot of mentoring. Pita learned a whole lot of new skills during COVID. Used YouTube a lot, did a lot of exercise stuff with the kids, managed to get himself upskilled on how to get on the school page, which was really good. Just recently I've got a little bit of funding from COGS and I've employed someone else to help Pita because it's just getting almost unmanageable. We have 2 different Year 7 and 8 classes running, a Year 9 and 10 class, a senior class in primary, plus the South Western Area School, which Pita goes down every fortnight just to check how they're going. We've just put it out to all the rest of the Western schools from Ross upwards, and they've all said they want it. We've done 2 taste testers already, Kokasahi and Kanieri, they both want it next year. We're going to do St Mary's next Monday, and we've got Ross to go as well. Yeah, so it's, you could say we're a victim of our own success, really. It's a lovely thing, and we use Westland really well. You know, while we're doing cactus, so we get out and about.
Just to break there, I think, if you look at some of the numbers, we sat down, we don't have numbers on here, but if you look at our need, from 2018, we're looking at least 50 participants. 2019, at least 120, and 2020, we're looking at over, or at least 200 participants from the different schools. So our trajectory in terms of how well we're tracking with the schools is just, it keeps on growing, which is a good problem to have, which is probably the main reason why we're here.
Yeah. So, you know, as a council, you give us 20,000 a year for cactus, which will end in June next year. Sustainability is always an issue. You know, we're a not-for-profit. Our job is to meet community need, and the community is telling us that they want it. Pretty much behind the scenes, I mean, I don't do the hard work of running around with the kids like Peter does. He does a magic job, but it's that getting that funding all the time, and I want whatever we have to be sustainable. Last year we got a really good chunk from Ministry of Youth Development, but it was only for the year, and they, this is amazing, but they won't fund us again. We did use some of the funding to get polypro backpacks, etc. So that we've got those in the system and we've labelled them well, and so we're trying to get the sustainability back the way that we estimate for us to get into next year. With Western High School, Tickus was, and the other primary schools, we would need at least 83,000. That's to have the two, so both part-time at the moment, but that's what we estimate. Keeping on track of school timetables is definitely one of our challenges. Often the school forgets to let us know if there's a teacher only day or something like that, but that's just part and parcel of being across lots of different classes and different things.
How did Grey High fund year one?
They fund it through, I was just talking to the principal last week about this actually, I think he funds it through his gateway kind of program. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he funds it quite differently. The funding we do get from the schools is when the kids have done enough challenges, we ask them if they've earned a t-shirt. It's a really big deal for them. And the first year I was there, they had to pay for the t-shirt once they've earned it, and that was a huge equity issue, created quite a few issues. So fundamentally, we want them to earn it. So Western High School said absolutely they'll pay for the t-shirts, which is about $2,000 at the moment with the amount of students, and Hokitika Primary School have said they will do that as well. We have asked for print places around to help with that. So we're just always knocking on people's doors, and if you stand too close to me, I'll ask you for money pretty much. Yeah, we just know that it's needed. If it was dying off and it wasn't, we wouldn't be here really. But yeah, that's Cactus for us. It's a really beautiful thing to be a part of. I just get to sit in the car on long days and eat sandwiches and look at the maps and shit. But there's a lot of background work that goes on. We make sure that Pitta is FEC trained, which is pre-hospital entry care for his first aid. A lot of the time we're out of range, so we're the SAT phone. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We've had students from the special needs department at the school to Whare Friday doing it that have had major epilepsy. And so there's been a lot of juggling, do we, don't we, and we want it to be equitable for kids. But that involves a lot of behind the scenes, making sure we've got our walkie-talkies and our SAT phones and we've got points on the map we can get coverage where I'll sit in the car and make sure that I've got communication or things like that. So that's pretty much our presentation, so shoot.
Very happy to take questions.
Councillor Cogan.
Hello. Proudly, I can actually tell you guys that I was one of the founding members of Strong Farms.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. And that was way back in 1998.
Yeah.
But I was very heavily involved with him in setting up the whole structure of Cactus back then. Rob had so much energy to give out into the community. Where the name correctional initially came from is because that's how it all initially started out, and where we were getting some of the funding from. Yeah. Because it was specifically back then for kids that were getting into a bit of trouble, to get them sort of around. And like our statistics, I don't know whether that information has been held, but the stats of what we achieved with those kids back then once they came on to Cactus, and then sort of moved on were pretty high. And then of course Wayne Jones came on to it.
He did the Southwestern.
Well, he did Southwestern and he did up here. Actually, he held up here for a while after Rob Fox finished.
Oh, okay. I know him from down south, so yeah. Magic.
Incredible. And I've actually just recently had the opportunity to meet Peter that you referred to. And he's got so much enthusiasm, hasn't he, for the job and the kids.
I mean, we would love to report lots of big sweaty teenagers and put it in here to talk to you, but maybe next time. But
like I'm really loving what you guys. When you refer to Joe, is that Joe Glancy?
Joe Glancy.
Yeah. Good little first 15 rugby player too that came I brought through from when he was only about 13. Yeah, he is a good kid. But look, great, that to see the increase in participation, but also really great that you've now got the schools involved and it's widened out to the wider community and these kids. As you know, and it's also become quite a, you know, dealing and talking to a lot of the young ones around the community. You know, they're all quite proud of the fact that they've all, you know, gone through and done cactus training. And it's the benefits to them too as they move forward, even with career-wise and confidence, and it's all of those things, that in the bigger picture actually will set them in really good stead for moving out into the workforce. So really, really good that the schools are involved, and it would be actually quite an interesting conversation that I think council, you know, could definitely look into around, you know, with funding opportunities or assistance, or because I don't know from a cactus perspective, but I know from particularly a rugby perspective, I know what that engagement, and then when you kind of get kids together like that and the things you can do with them, how much difference that can make to their lives and how they progress as they get older. So yeah, good for you guys continuing it on and expanding it.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, thanks guys. It's always good to see that presentation and hear the figures that are going through it. It's great. I'd really like to see the schools supporting it more financially. I think, especially, you know, like they're taking it as a subject. So hopefully that comes with, even if it's a limited authority to teach or whatever they have nowadays. I really think the schools need to step up. I'd love to see the council support it more, but there's so much to balance. So yeah. And I wonder, like when Rob Fox was doing it, so was he doing it as part of his paid policeman job?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It was a mix. It was a mix. He gave up a lot of his own spare time, actually. Yeah. You
have to wonder if there'd be some sort of support in the police.
I mean, I know that like Bruce comes to some of our longest days, and definitely the fire brigade have been amazing too.
Yeah.
So they support us with, you know, times being there, but yeah.
Cool. Sorry, can I just quickly ask, that's just made me think, do the kids get offered credits through school to actually be enrolled in cactus? Because I know we've just done recently in the last couple of years like a rugby academy now where they can actually, it can help with their credits at their level, you know, coming through with their level 1s and 2s, and I did.
Yeah, it's kind of that funny thing where the school have to buy the credits because it's from an outside, so Careers Force, which do credits for the youth work and business management and things, they're like an outside provider. So the school use their gateway funding to pay, to basically buy the credits, and so it's for level 3 youth work. So it's a very tight rate to walk with the schools because they don't want to put their money unless they think the kids are going to get it. And so that's the first time this year that we've done that. I'm accredited to assess level 3 Careers Force things. Last year we had a young girl doing our leadership camps with Jane actually, and she did the youth work credits, and we had another young fellow that was going into the schools and teaching kapahaka. So we did it because we kind of want to acknowledge that they're doing this magic stuff, but it might not necessarily be what they always traditionally do in the classroom. So this is the first year we've done that, but we've got to have lots of conversations with the school around that.
Yeah, because those credits, you know, are the difference with some of these ones I know that are coming through, that it's getting them over the line or not.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So some of the credits I've just done in the last few weeks have been around group leadership, you know, what are leadership skills, and they'll be writing about that kind of thing. So we want them to write about what they're actually doing in terms of mentoring younger kids, and so they're not just sort of writing down whatever, they're actually talking about what they've been doing. Yeah.
And how do they go with doing those credits? Do they find it quite a lot of writing and inside
would
stuff?
rather be outside running around, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. But we kind of just go in 2 weeks on a Thursday. You will be in and we just get on with it really. Yeah, we have some really interesting discussions when we talk about group leadership and what makes a good leader and what makes a good group member and things like that. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor, that's
I mean, say if you anything you see as social good, That is social good. What you guys are doing, bravery and mana, you know, positive group culture, honesty, all that stuff. Geez, fantastic, eh? Really good.
Kika will come and run with them at the next longest day. Kika.
You're very welcome, yeah. You're very welcome.
Maybe we should all go on to it.
Just take Simon Razor's hand.
Yeah, that's Simon putting his hand up for it. Thank you so much. This is the coming and presenting to the community development committee. We've got that, we've packed up the presentation as well as the funding discussion. So we're entering into LTP cycles at the moment, which basically means your timing's excellent for it to come in front of the council. So thank you very much.
If you have any further questions, we're happy to see answers or come back to you.
And we're going to have a chat after the meeting around youth as well. So if you're able to stick around, that'd be great. Cool, thank you very much. Someone to move that we receive the presentation from Buddy and Julia from West Street regarding cactus youth development strategy. Councillor Neal, Councillor Davidson, all those in favour? Aye. Those against, the resolution's carried. Thank you very much. We now move into our staff reports and the Safer Western report, pages 19 through 42 of your agenda. And it's to update the committee on the work of the Safer Western Coalition. And I'll hand over to Councillor Neal and Sarah, and Community Development Advisor, to speak to the report.
Thank you. I am very aware of the time. It's gone quite long, so I'll take it as read. But just we did have a great workshop at the end of July, and I just asterisked a few things that have created quite a bit of discussion. And the first one was the policemen talking about gangs and gang patches, and this is something that needs to go to. Sarah, please chip in whenever I get anything wrong, won't you? Going through to Destination Hokitika and seeing how on board they want to get. It's happening in Greymouth at the moment, where they have signs on the doors saying no patches or insignia inside. So the people are welcome, but not in their patches. And depending on how it rolls out in Greymouth, they'll then be looking at bringing it down here. So that created a lot of discussion, seriously.
And there was discussion about having Safer Westland as
on the logos.
On the logo.
On the signs, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Another one was Rosie McGrath talking about the alcohol harm and just the part that the council has to play in this with the licensing authority. And we talked about having her come along and present to the committee, which is being relooked at the moment, I think, the membership of that, is that right?
Yes, I think the membership of that committee will be advertised shortly.
So I'm really keen to see that presentation happening through and just, yeah, getting a slightly broader outlook on that committee with that. And another one that presented was Natasha Morris. So as a council staff member, oh my gosh, she was impressive and she stunned everyone in the room, I think, with just how proactive the library has been for the past year, since she's been there, particularly, I guess. The amount of different workshops, different things, different events, activities, and everything that they've got going was just incredible. So that was the main things that I wanted to mention. It's a great networking thing that the Safer Western do. So people they sit there and they're listening and they realise what other groups are doing. So Farah presented at that workshop on the Bee Collective, and I went back to RDA and we've joined up with it. So yeah, great networking thing. And if there's anything that you want us to bring up at those meetings, let us know. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I would comment that council has been very supportive of Safer Westland, and Carl Jackson comes to our meetings and creates a really, really good lines of communication. He's chair of the road safety, and that's really appreciated. And he often gets asked lots of other slightly council-y questions, but it's it's very, very good. We had Torito present, and that is a lot of our funding for different programs comes from Torito. I go through to Greymouth for the Torito meetings. So we get funding for the community champions for that from them, and quite a few of the other things that we've run through. I don't know if you remember earlier in the year we had the Pretty Smart that we partially funded, coming down to a speaker coming down to speak to young women about being smarter in their choices, about how they present themselves, how they use social media, bullying. It was very well received by parents and kids at the school. Yeah, so we've been very fortunate with Torito funding. We're also getting the Mates and Dates funding through ACC coming, and it'll be supported as well as from Torito to get that in our schools here. So we've been we're quite lucky with the Torito is funded through MSD, and that is for the West Coast. But we are considerably lucky with the funding that comes to Westland, and that's the whole of Westland, not just Hokitika.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the report, Councillor Neil and Sarah. Are there any questions?
No.
That's great.
Part of that too, because it's a good mix for you,
Yeah,
Jane.
just give us a heads up if there's any issues that you want to report up there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Someone to move that we received the report from Jamie Chairperson at Safe for Westland. Councillor Kogan, second. Councillor Davidson, all those in favour? Thank you very much. Now at the conclusion of the meeting proper, at 7:45, we'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you so much for your participation, members, staff and public that have attended, and those that have enjoyed tuning in on